Haha! You thought the next review would be Resident Evil 2, but I tricked you all! It's Little Nightmares, a perfectly morbid tale developed by Tarsier Studios, who also made these here, and was published by Bandai Namco. I know you're wondering, why not Resident Evil 2? Answer is, no reason, shut up, stop asking. If you want to know what its true score is, then here we go, let's find out. If I had to sum up what this game's identity is, I'd say it's the middle point in a Venn diagram between Limbo, Tim Burton, and Coraline. You play as a 9-year-old girl by the name of Six, who wakes up in a strange and terrifying place called the Moor, with nothing but a raincoat and a lighter. This is a fairly basic puzzle platformer with a focus on physics. You can walk, sprint, jump, crawl, grab things, and turn the lighter on to trigger checkpoints and just see around you, but that's about all the actions you'll be performing here. No doubt the first thing that sticks out to you looking at the gameplay is the art style. The game has this beautiful and eerie, almost clay-looking aesthetic to the character designs, and the environments are wonderfully detailed for a game of this type. The lighting is also something worth commendation. There was clearly a lot of thought in regards to what areas should and shouldn't be lit to really mesh with the mechanic of turning the lighter on and off. This game does have a lot of stealth elements, and you'll spend a lot of your time hiding, so no, having your lighter always on is not necessarily the best course of action. If this game is a master of anything, I've got to say it's the use of environment and camera work. There's a room in the first 5 minutes of the game where you drop into it, you see a chair and a door handle, and you think, I know what to do here. Then as the camera pans over, you see what the chair was doing there, and you just sit there thinking, shit, this is not what I was expecting from this, and it sets the tone for the entire rest of the game. Seeing future monsters walking through the background of some of the larger areas is a great way to get the player wondering what kind of fresh hell they're going to be walking into next. The sound and music are also definitely something to praise here. Like with Resident Evil, this game doesn't use music at all times, but the soundtrack is one of the creepiest and most tense ones I've heard in a long time. The sound design in general is really great actually. Footsteps sound different depending on what surface you're on. Things like pulling out a board from a blocked doorway really make it sound like a lot of force was used. Plus the animation for it throwing your character back is so oddly satisfying that it never gets old. Character design is another strong suit of the game. There may not be a lot of different designs here, but every single one hits. From the main character Six, each of the big adult monster people you'll run into and away from through your journey, and these little paper looking guys called gnomes. Each monster person is totally grotesque. Their limbs and body proportions are uniquely awful, and frankly, the way they look makes you even wonder if they really are people. But it works so well at making you want to yeet the hell out of the room when they show up. Getting into the meat and the potatoes of the game now, the biggest complaints would be the length and the small amount of optional things to do or collect throughout the game. The puzzles aren't all that difficult in the game. Common sense is going to be a much handier tool than 5-head strats, and nothing is going to make you feel big Dumbo here. But the trade-off is that you end up coming out of the game with something around about a 2.5 hour playtime if you don't find yourself getting majorly stuck. There are 2 extra things you can do along the way to try to extend that out. Each chapter has a handful of statues of the geisha from the opening cutscene that you can throw to destroy, and there are a small number of the cute little gnome people that you can give hugs to, which, full disclosure, melted my heart and gave me brief moments of respite. I originally played the game when it launched in 2017, but playing it this time I had the complete edition, which comes with 3 DLC chapters that make a new, almost B-side narrative, running parallel to the original game, called Secrets of the Moor. You play as a boy called the Runaway Kid, who is briefly seen in the original game, and each chapter adds roughly an hour to the game's total playtime. Yes, that does kinda mean that the DLC has a longer playtime than the original game does. Each chapter of the DLC has a different theme in terms of environment, gameplay, and a different monster going against you. The first chapter, The Depths, is focused on tight platforming and timing, moving through a lot of watery areas with something in the water constantly trying to get to you. The second is The Hideaway, in which you go through several smaller areas to gather up gnomes you find, and in an almost Pikmin kind of way, you use them to solve puzzles and get through areas. This chapter was the one I found to really shake up the gameplay most and give something fresh to do. The last chapter is The Residence, which for the most part gives you a hub area and lets you just go for it, finding the items you need. This chapter felt very familiar to the last game I reviewed, which I'm not going to complain about at all. All in all, I personally really enjoyed Little Nightmares and The Secrets of the Moor, but I'll understand if some people don't. The art style and general aesthetic is right up my alley, but if it's not something that you're super into, then it might be a bit of a tough sell for a game with a 5.5 hour total runtime and not a lot of optional content to expand that out. There's not a huge amount of unique mechanics to pad out the gameplay further, so I can see the developers not wanting it to get stale, but they did add in some new ideas into the DLC chapters, and I hope they really expand on this with the second game coming out soon. I mentioned at the start of the review that you play as Six and you're in a place called the Maw, but unless you look up the game online, you're probably not going to know any of this since none of the game's lore is found within the game itself. If the devs did want to have lore about the characters and locations, I would have liked for it to have somehow been accessible in the game. Now, time for the verdict. The true score for Little Nightmares Complete Edition is going to be an 8 out of 10. I would have liked to rate it higher, but the length and the lack of extra content keeps it from getting closer to a 9 for me. Think of the game like a really good thrill ride. You'll get a hankering for it real bad, but once you're done, there's no real reason to jump back in anytime soon. If you're one of the unlucky souls that made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. It'd be really helpful if you could hit that subscribe button and change it from red to grey. It would help me out a lot, and it would help me pump out more reviews for you guys. Alright, that's going to be about it from me. Catch ya.